All right, we will come up with conflicts. Identify our 7 types. Now, wait, before I forget, we can actually do, you could say character versus supernatural, and I'm going to say Armand has a supernatural conflict when he discovers the letters of his deceased mother. Readers could argue that this event was a spiritual experience. Armand happened to have because his mother's ghost sent him the letters. This is obviously pushing it because this isn't a supernatural ghost story, but I wanted to try to be creative there. All right, so we have Desiree versus Fate. We can say Desiree has a conflict with Fate because she is never made aware of her racial background, which leads to her suicide, we'll say. And then Armand versus Fate. Armand loses. Armand loses his conflict with destiny when he learns. Actually, we'll say his mother. We'll say Armand's mother loses her conflict with destiny because she thought her son was destined never to know that she was of African descent. So that is how you could do a character versus fate destiny, character versus technology. That one is tricky because we are in the antebellum South. We can say here that there is mention of technology. The wagon, and that does cause Desiree's conflict. So we could say was left by a party of Texans in a wagon. All right, so wait. Desiree versus technology because it was a wagon that left her on the steps of Amande, thus resulting in her conflict of being an adoptee. Obviously, got to get creative. Now we'll get into our main one. So we have Desiree versus society. And I will say Desiree faces a conflict with society because Armand's accusation of her black heritage would mean her being excommunicated or being shunned from her Louisiana society. And then same with Armand. We could say Armand has to make a decision to stand by his wife and son, even though they are of African heritage. This would have proven problematic based on the laws of Louisiana after it was purchased by the American government. So when Louisiana was French territory, black people could own property, they could buy their own freedom, marry amongst each other. There wasn't these strict like racial laws, and things would have been a change after Louisiana was bought. But even prior to that, obviously Armand, we already characterized him as a cruel, narcissistic racist, right? All right, so now we have Desiree versus Armand. Um, Desiree confronts Armand about his hateful actions towards her and their son. Armand responds that he no longer loves her because she is biracial. All right, and then we had Desiree versus her mother. We can say Desiree's mother begs for her to come home rather than make an impulsive decision and kill herself. We could maybe say that Desiree's mom was aware that she might do something like that because to beg her daughter to come home, I mean, you would have to think if you were in Desiree's situation, I would go home. So the fact that Desiree wasn't just thinking that, but I guess it was adding this accusation of being black that maybe she thought her mother would have changed her mind. So that's why she was assuring her that she can return. And then obviously we have our character versus self. Desiree faces an internal conflict when she must decide to continue life after being branded a person of African heritage, African descent, heritage, descent, African, a person of African ethnicity. All right, and then we had Armand faces internal conflict when he turns his back on his wife and infant son, only to discover it was he who was half black. There we go. So we have our two conflicts. You could also say Desiree faces an internal conflict when when she attempts to decipher why the community is acting so strangely um, towards her new son, her newborn son. And then that could be a conflict. When she's trying to figure out why everyone was showing up unannounced, why Armand started to behave horribly. He had this change like Satan has possessed him. So that's the different types of conflicts that we see in Desiree's baby.